Hey everyone, welcome back to another Devlog episode of the 2D action RPG, Resonant Blade. Last time we took a closer look at the combat mechanics and some of the problems I was running into with the chord combos and the harmonic shield. If you haven't seen that video yet or the intro, you can check those videos out here to find out more. In this episode, we're looking at a solution I came up with using a sword parry system, a new enemy type, and some basic tileset pixel art. Coming up. Starting with the new parry mechanic. So I removed the harmonic shield idea completely. Again, that was too cumbersome and too complex for an action-based combat system. I am keeping the chord combos, but changing the way the player creates and executes them. And the way that this is going to work is that the player will use the Resonant Blade to parry and absorb different frequencies from enemies to charge a combo. So here's an example of the simple parry animation that I ended up with for the up, down, left, and right directions. When hitting the right mouse button, the player kind of holds the Resonant Blade in front of them for a short period of time, during which a projectile can be absorbed into the blade. Getting to the parry position, I ended up doing that pretty much instantaneously so that the player feels an immediate response when right-clicking. So the player has to wait for the parry animation to finish until they're able to parry again. And this will keep auto-spamming the parry action in check so that the player won't be able to parry infinite projectiles. That being said though, there is an exception to this waiting rule. And that's if the player successfully parries a projectile, the animation timer will immediately reset, allowing the player to parry again without having to wait. Once the player gets comfortable with the timing, they'll be able to chain multiple parries together. Another check though that prevents an infinite chain of parrying is that the parry ability will consume a good chunk of the player's energy bar, so they'll only be able to parry a limited amount of projectiles before having to wait for the energy bar to recharge. Other than the charge text appearing when they successfully parry, I also added a slight camera shake and slow motion effect. And I think these subtle indicators make the parry feel more impactful when the player does it. Getting more into how the parries charge the blade. Parrying will store up to 3 frequency charges inside the Resonant Blade. Every successful parry will store the frequency in one of those 3 slots, and then it will cycle to the next one whenever the player parries again. And so I want to add a reset stage though after a certain amount of time, or maybe when the player exits combat, so that it refreshes or clears out all the charged slots. And it would be nice to have some kind of visual indicator to let the player know what charges they have in the Resonant Blade currently. When you end up getting the right combination of frequency charges stored inside the blade, and in this case, right now I'm only talking about notes that form either a major chord or a minor chord, the player will have a few seconds to release the charges as a ranged attack. And I like the blade beam attack with the minor chord right now, but I want to differentiate the major chord range attack, which right now is just kind of a particle effect energy blast, and I want to change that to something a little different, maybe more of an AoE pulse attack or something along those lines. To complement this new parry mechanic, I created a new type of enemy, a laser turret. And I wanted a less challenging enemy, and in this case one that doesn't move, to be able to teach the player how to use the chord combos. I don't want to have a wall of text tutorial telling the player to parry these 3 frequencies in the right order or whatever just to make a major chord or a minor chord. I want to be able to show the player through gameplay and teach them through gameplay, so hopefully I can do this with this laser turret enemy. The design of this laser turret is pretty much a simple little circle with a cannon that rotates around the base. And I made it so that the turret will fire 3 projectiles with different colors and frequencies at a time before recharging. So it's kind of like a burst fire shot. And these 3 frequencies will, at least at the beginning, they'll form a chord so that when the player parries all 3 in a row, it'll trigger their ranged attack, their special attack. And I think I'm just going to call that limit break for now, because not all of them are going to be ranged. They'll have different kinds of effects. And in the process, the player will learn about chord combos. Different laser turrets are going to be linked to different chords or just different sets of frequencies so that the player can get used to and learn the different frequency sounds and colors that go with the different chord combos. To prevent the player from just dodging the laser fire with their dash and running up to the turret and chopping it down, I placed the turrets on kind of a raised platform. That way the player won't be able to reach them with close range attacks. When I'm first introducing the player to this mechanic, I intend to have it in a closed area where the player cannot progress until the turret is destroyed. They will at that point know about the parry. They will be forced to, parry the enemy projectiles. And when they do this, they will eventually trigger their limit break, and they'll have access to that ranged attack, which will allow them to destroy the turret. I added a little variety with the turret's defense by having their defense type and sprite color change at regular intervals. And this is going to make them a little more challenging, especially later on, so that the player won't be able to just memorize that, hey, this minor chord turret is always red, so I'm just going to have my blade equipped to red. Their defenses will be changing, so the player will have to use their AV field to figure out the weakness. So when I was implementing the laser turret, I realized that the player would have to get really close to the turret to get them within range of their AV field to figure out the weakness. And when doing that, they don't have, well, at least me, I feel like my reaction time is average, but you don't have a lot of time to parry the projectiles when you're up close. You can memorize the timing and practice and do it, but I feel like for a lot of players, it will just be, more of a nuisance and a headache. I just wanted to simplify that and allow the player to have more distance between them and the turret, but still be able to detect their weakness. And so what I did was I put the turrets up on these raised platforms like I was talking about before, but I have the platforms change colors according to the turret weakness. So basically you can see their weakness from farther away just by getting the raised platform within the AV field. And kind of switching gears, going more into the art side of things, I started working on some background pixel art tile sets. And I've never really done these before, but after watching a bunch of tutorials and kind of stumbling my way through, I think I ended up with some decent grass and dirt. Next would probably be to add some, water and cliffs for some dimension, and eventually getting more into like a futuristic cityscape tile set. Initially, I did start with more of an industrial dark gray tile set, and this was okay, but it's not really the quality or aesthetic that I was looking for. Other than that, there's not much here to show with the tile sets. I did notice that once I put it into the game, all of a sudden it makes the game world feel a little more real. It seems like adding in art and music at moments when I'm starting to run out of gas and inspiration, it can be a good tactic for keeping the workflow more consistent and motivation levels up. Hopefully anyways. Well, that's it for this episode. For next time, we'll look at a new limit break ability for the major chord, an idea I have for a boss enemy, and probably something else with music or art. If you like the video, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment if you have any questions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.